All right, so you're in the carport and you're shucking.
We really might have done. We might, because those hearings lasted, or to me maybe it just seemed interminable because I was a kid. I don't know, but it might have gone through not just peas and beans, but corn too. I don't know what all we were doing out there. I was pretty riveted though, especially maybe watching the reactions of the adults, because I knew they didn't like Nixon and all of those. Just they looked like evil people to me, maybe just because of the family, the very liberal, progressive family that now I realize how amazing that was for that day and age. But it was pretty somber in some ways too, and usually when we, broken strung beans or hulled peas, conversations would just be about like old times or, I don't know, family stories, but we were really quiet. Just sitting there.
And you were more interested in watching, like, the way that your family reacted, maybe?
I think maybe I was taking my cues from that, probably, and realizing, like, this is kind of boring, but pretty amazing experience. Like, if I were a normal teenager, I would be rolling my eyes, but I watched them and knew to just kind of mark that, like, to witness that. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember like a lot of specifics, but just we didn't have a lot of money, so it was a really small little black and white TV. But I remember everybody liked John Dean. We just kind of knew that he was a good guy. And Mitchell was awful. And didn't his wife die under mysterious circumstances? And you're so young, you probably don't remember, but
the melodrama.
I mean, that was way before your time, I would assume. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, and so that's kind of weird now. And my dad and I'm glad I remember a little bit of that, and because I've never really studied those days. I didn't have that in history class because it would have been too recent. But now that the Trump stuff is going on, my dad and I talk about the similarities, and he said, all that seems like ancient history now, but at the time, people were freaked out and kind of scared and worried.
Yeah, the crumbling of American democracy.
Yeah. And that was, I understood that we were losing our innocence as a nation. I really do remember understanding that, even though I was only, I guess, like 10 or 11, something like that.
And did you have a church community that stood as a bulwark against the crumbling of that innocence when you were growing up? Did you go to church?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I look back on that and think that's bizarre now too. When you're a kid, everything just seems kind of normal. Something had happened in my dad's kind of country church real near their house on the Holston River, kind of out in the country more. And then before I was born, people started going to First Christian Church in Bristol. So we drove to town. And my great aunts and my grandparents and just everybody had left this church, this country church in mass that was also a Christian church, and just never went there again and didn't talk. I still don't know. It's like this shameful, weird thing. I think the preacher or somebody slept with, I don't know what happened. But, and it was a downtown church, pretty small, and then they tore it down to make a parking lot when I was about 6 or 7. And it was a lovely old kind of, I wish that architecture in Bristol but Americans just do that. They just plow over things. But they built this, what looks like First Baptist Church here, kind of one of the first mega churches, I guess. And, but our pastor had a PhD, and it was very peopled to me by very, very smart congregation now looking back. And I don't know if everybody was liberal, but my parents must have found a pretty good group of people who were like-minded. Of course, this was before all the abortion stuff happened and before politics kind of infused a lot of different churches. So I don't know what it's like now. My parents don't go there anymore. My mom goes to a little church beside the elementary school where she taught. Just kind of a little, but...
Well, and now you work at a Christian college.
Yeah. And I've always thought of this as Baptist, though, but now it's saying a Christian university. I think that's a sea change. You don't understand that. That would never have been. When we first got hired here, I didn't let you finish your question. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cut you off. I think it was just maybe the year before we came here part-time, they were pretty much making faculty members go to First Baptist Church. or find some Baptist church to go to if they didn't love that church. And so it's just a huge change to have that on the documents, on the website, and everywhere, a Christian university, because that's just so much more broad, but more Appalachian, really. I mean, I don't know if I didn't even know that till I was in college, that the church I'd grown up in was, I guess, from the Campbellites, which were, those people were, that was a grassroots Appalachian movement. So, and how that came to be such a kind of a smart, savvy church in Bristol, Tennessee in the 60s and 70s, and I have no idea. I have no idea. And now First Baptist, I'm saying stuff that's going to be on, I'm just now realizing.
Your name's not on there.
I shouldn't, people know my voice though, but it's so odd now. I mean, I don't know if you've been following that since there's a woman pastor at First Baptist here, people are being asked not to go there. So it's like this 180 degrees. It's very, very interesting time, politically and religiously, that we're living in.
Have been conflated.
Yeah,
So.
Yes. During, like, right around Reagan. Right around when I blame him.
Yeah, well.
But he looks like a mensch now, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, so does George W.
Yes, you're right.
War criminal's a pretty okay guy.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Looking pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Just like somebody's sweet old grandpa or something.
Yeah, somebody's sweet old racist grandpa.
Hoy.
Yeah. So you grew up in this, bastion of liberal humanism. In
It
Bristol,
seems
Tennessee.
that way to me, sort of. Maybe I had rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I probably did.
How does that? So obviously, with the conflation of like politics and religion, like, do you see your own kind of faith as political, or are you not that kind of critical?
I guess I think Christianity has always been political. I mean, from the very beginning, it seems like to me, Jesus was crucified because the people in politics didn't like him. Maybe
the Romans as evil empire.
I'm oversimplifying. Like, even when he was born, right? Herod was afraid somebody was going to take over as king. So it was always the political figures who... So we shouldn't be surprised, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe it was always that way to a lesser degree, but... And, when you're a kid, everything always looks a little rosier. But it seems like we understood separation of church and state for about 200 years. And the bicentennial happened when I was a kid. I mean, I'm thinking this through as I'm talking about it. Of course, it's kind of striking to me to go like, oh yeah, that did kind of, yeah. And then things sort of started, to me, kind of falling apart. I don't like this whole. I mean, I just taught. I'm showing the crucible to my 301 classes. I break the rules and start with that because I think they need to understand where our culture came from. And Puritans as a group are extinct, but Calvinists are not, Presbyterians are not, and our culture that's kind of prudish. I think we're still prudish in a lot of we're hypocritical, but and I forget where I was going with that, but just that they need to know the term theocracy. Mm-hmm. They need to see the worst that can come to and understand that, because they really don't get why there's separation of church and state. I don't know that that's taught in high school anymore, or taught in civics. I wouldn't. Did you learn that in Wheat? That was a big deal for us.
Yeah, I had an American government class.
Oh yeah, see, that's really cool that you have.
It was.
Access, but not everybody has access to that.
Exactly.
So.
Access to healthcare.
Yeah, as if that's a privilege.
Yeah.
My eyes watering. Sorry.
Sorry. So, yesterday you got like super excited when we were talking about like stories and storytelling.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
did I?
You did. You were like, you got really animated.
I was animated.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might have been your post near death experience.
I was glad to stop talking about that.
Exactly. So we kind of live in the medium of language, right? We mediate our experience through language.
Yeah.
So, as kind of speaking out of your experience and also your expertise as poet and professor, talk to me about that. Talk to me about like what language does and what gets you excited about it.
I just really love sentences. I'm such a nerd. No, I do. And that's why it takes me so long to grade even the worst papers. Because they're like little Rubik's Cubes, how to make this better. And then I have to stop and go, this is not my writing. I'm not responsible for revising this. I probably should have been an editor instead of a grader, because I really get torn that way. And I think I'm good at editing, but I just have always been drawn to syntax and how sentences are put together and how one little image or one little sentence left out or a detail, because my parents are those kind of hillbilly people like I am if I really get going, who can tell the same story, like a family. You may even come from people like that, and maybe a lot of families are like that. They tell the same family story over and over again, year after year, and it has these nuances that shift and transform. And that's an oral tradition, of course, but I think growing up, my mom and my dad in some ways are maybe mismatched, like everybody's parents are in some ways, but they're both the storyteller in their family out of all their siblings. And I think there's something to that and listening to them kind of be the story keepers. And I don't think they would think of themselves that way. But just first I heard stories. And hearing also different people. Or I'd hear my dad tell something, and then you get in a room full of relatives, and the story shifts, and people start chiming in and add like, no, that was winter. That wasn't fall. We had already killed the pig, or we had already, and they'll go, oh, yeah, I remember. And that back treading and the trajectory that it takes shifts and becomes more fluid and shared, that kind of collective experience. And I know you didn't really ask this, but I think that's why I was drawn to reading and words and trying to write things. And yet I'm driven crazy in my own writing by trying to get it right, quote unquote, because there isn't right or wrong. But when it's permanent and on the page, it's just incredibly different than out in the middle of the air. And I've tried to write down some of my family stories, and they really just don't work on paper. They need to have that interaction and that immediacy. But yeah. And that may not have answered. Please ask again or shift that.
I was going to ask you, to put you on the spot, could you tell me one of those family stories? Do you have access to them, kind of without being?
I can tell you a funny, dirty one.
Do it.
It's not really dirty. I just love this short little story about my Aunt Leah when she was the youngest of the 5 kids in my dad's family. And she was, I think, the only one born in a hospital, maybe. The others, my dad was born in a log cabin. And I like telling people that, the family was building their house and had moved out from the in-laws. And it was actually, I just think like, oh my gosh, he was born in this fallen down place. But my Aunt Leah was evidently like about 4, and all the other siblings go to school, and she's around all these people who are smart and have all these books in the house. And they're sitting around the fire, and somebody says, I think Leah, it's time for her to go to BED, bed, they're spelling it. And she pipes up and says, I know what BDD spells. BDD spells ass. But she knew it had double letters on or she heard it that way. And she thought it was dirty because I guess it kind of tells on them that they had spelled other. It's time for her to go to BED. And she's 76 or 77 now. And we still all just like cry when we tell that story. It's so sweet. You'd think we would be like, we never want to hear that again. But we just love to tell that.
Your touchstone.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I like it. So you said that if you'd had your I'd rathers, you would have been an editor.
Oh, well, maybe. Yeah. I really like that, the practice of that. and helping other people get. I like doing that with students. I mean, that's teaching creative writing is so. It's just endlessly fascinating because they just they're making something. How much in this world now, we don't even have manufacturing in this country. Nobody kind of makes things. So to help students make something is really wonderful. And helping them edit the literary journal, especially, I think this will be the 16th edition of the College Literary Journal, and I really have to hold back from kind of making editorial comments. I really do want to be the supervisor, but sometimes they make really stupid choices. And the more of them there are, like I think 8 or 9 editors this time. The only other time I had that many people in the class. Yeah, you need one. You're right. You see democracy in progress, and it ain't pretty because they make the most mediocre choices the more they try to agree with each other. But I've seen that now last year it wasn't this way, but a couple of times students that age, and I love that age, and they're wonderful, and they get a bad rap from like old guys in the airport line, and I have to correct them. Like, it's not just kids who are on their devices and they're not ruining the planet and this kind. I mean, I've actually had verbal confrontations, not confrontations, but correcting people. But I do see that they don't collaborate as well now as they did maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I don't know if it's social media or the Trump era or just something, but I'm hoping this group, they seem like they're very, we shared first works yesterday, and they seemed very caring of each other's, not harsh, but critical to a good degree, but coming from a good place. I'm stumbling over my words, but I like seeing that too, seeing young people editing, because if they can edit other people, they'll get better at editing their own work. So I probably didn't answer that either, but yeah, to like run a literary journal, like a real true big time literary journal, that would be great. Now my husband and I started that little publishing company, Sapling Grove Press, thinking we would have tons of free time to, like, where were we going to get all this free time? When you're on sabbatical, everything looks
rosy.
Yes, it looks so rosy and like you have tons of time. But we are right now editing a novel of Mary Hodges about the zinc mines here in the 1930s. I mean, when people think of Appalachian Lit, they think of coal mining. But she has really, from her dad's stories of working in the mines in the 30s and 40s, and that's the setting, she's really captured this whole world right underneath our feet here. And I've had the best time helping her shape and reshape some of the stories and some of the nuances, the cultural nuances and dialect, because she's got African-American characters, because there were plenty of, and Mexicans, there were Mexicans working in the mines here. We don't realize that Appalachia has for a long time been an incredibly diverse place.
Yeah, Spanish and German.
Yeah, and Italians, the Waldensians even, who came over to North Carolina to the textile mills. And anyway, I went way off course, but
that's kind of what I'm looking for. All right.
Well, you picked the right person then.
So you have a PhD in English.
Yes.
Is it in English literature or English language?
It's American Lit after the Civil War.
So you have, I think, like most of us who do this kind of work, you've crafted your like professional self.
Yeah.
Right? And the way that you talk, the things that you do.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. How do you think what has changed since your days of throwing back whiskey and the shank of the evening to
in grad school?
Yeah, like how did you looking back, how did your language change?
My language, or my approach to language, or
I think the way that you use language.
I know a lot more words.
Yeah, how do they come out of your mouth, do you think?
I think that for a while, because I mean, this happened way before grad school. Mm-hmm. I lost a job because of my accent when I moved to Ohio. Mm-hmm. I mean, the guy just said, like, I'm firing you because of how you talk. Just like, and I'm a white person. I can't say I've ever been, that anybody's really but that was really a comeuppance to move just 7 hours north and be fired right out of college from this, and it was just a crappy retail job, but it was devastating. And so I think probably that whipped me into some kind of shape, and I really did. And then, and I married into a family that had lived in Ohio. So probably started watching my P's and Q's a little more. I think I did, even subconsciously. But I resented the hell out of it from the get-go, I think. But I think it's sad because everybody's losing their accents. And even when I first started teaching, I did kind of recoil when students would say they have a bad accent. And I remember just starting to have this idea and articulate it out loud to them. There is not a bad accent. There are strong accents and deep accents. But I love accents from all over, Minnesota and Wisconsin. And, our niece, my husband's sister, lives in Milwaukee. And her daughter, Hannah, teased me unmercifully when she was a little kid and they would come visit. And she'd say, I don't have an accent. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go to the car now and go to the store and you don't have an accent. I'm just trying to. And she's like 8 going, I don't talk like that. I don't talk like. I'm like, yes, you do. You can't help it. And it's not a bad thing. And it's not bad that I talk like I talk. And that's, to me, the terrific thing about being a linguist, that I didn't understand that linguists are non-judgmental and there's a safe space. You wouldn't have a job if we all talked like newscasters. But we are all starting to lose. You didn't pick up a Chattanooga accent.
No.
I don't know if you have some of the vernacular colloquialisms or something like that.
Oh, I don't even know if I have that.
Yeah.
I think my parents moved there like maybe 10 years. No, like 7 years before I was born.
Yeah.
So they weren't there for that long.
Where were they?
Well, my mom's from St. Louis, and my dad was born in Japan.
Oh.
To people from Michigan who were English. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no.
And St. Louis.
Midwestern.
Yeah, St. Louis is that kind of Midwestern, like my husband. When he went to school here, the professor he had would call on him to pronounce things because he had the closest thing to no accent,
Right.
kind of zero accent, which is. I think then that's what a lot of Americans shoot for, is to have no accent. But how boring. It's just so boring to think that you won't be distinguishable or
You also won't be discriminated
unique.
against.
Yeah, you're right. You won't lose a job because you're a hillbilly. Maybe just because you smell bad.
Yeah, maybe that. Maybe that's it. Okay. Yeah.
Want me to say these words?
Yeah, can you say those words?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah. I'll do this. You want me to say word list 1 or just?
No, you can just start reading.
Okay. Fill, pin, oil, hollow, fish bait, wash, help, feel, potato, life, pin, thorough, feel, follow, get, red, old lace, fire, fail, home, hit, wire, feet, doing, okra, greasy, mining, tobacco, fell, lice. Lot, thought, prize, boil, pour, pen, choice, toll, ball, pour, trap, dress, cub, thing, fought, test, hand, nothing, this, morning, often, trimmed, clasp, cost, risk, story, ask, toe, fault, grasp.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.